Unleash the fury, Mitch. Unleash the fury.
Unleash the fury.
My name's Ryan, welcome to Loam Wolf, and we're gonna unleash the fury.
Mitch.
Hey, what's up everybody? We are here today with two very important members who helped bring the new GT Fury to life. And we're gonna talk to them a little bit about some of the features, the fun, the challenges, and where they think this awesome new downhill bike sits in the category. All right, so super high level, what is new and different about the GT Fury this year?
All new design for 2023. Basically kind of full ground up, working with Ryan on trying to make this the most badass, fast, comfortable, and pretty sick looking downhill bike out there. Rolling here on 29-inch wheels or mullet, however you want. 200 mil of travel front and back. Really meant to go fast, whether you're putting it on a chairlift or the back of a truck. Fast is fun, and that's what we're chasing after.
Did you work with athletes and the team riders in the development phase of this?
We did. We took their feedback from the previous gen bike, and what you see here incorporates all of it.
In the development and the testing of this bike, coming from that last generation to this, what were big goals? What were things we wanted to improve and change? And how was that process for you guys?
We really liked our LTS suspension platform. It has won a World Cup on the previous gen Fury, but we want to make a few tweaks, some of which were we increased the anti-squat value to give you a little bit more pep out of the starting gate and out of corners, and we actually increased anti-rise values to keep the bike more stable under braking. Starting from the front of the bike, our cable routing actually goes over your number plate, whether that's a race plate or a free ride event plate. Nothing's worse than your cable's coming out of the front of your head tube and you have to cut a hole in your number plate, or they rub against your number plate. So that was one gripe that a lot of racers have that no one really ever tries to solve, and we did. The other thing is talking about cable routing. We have tube-in-tube cable routing, so you pass the cable into a port here on the inside of the seat tube and it pops out at the head tube. It's super user-friendly. There's no fishing around and there's no noise of cables rattling. A couple other race features are that every racer is different and they have different preferences, and so having the adjustability that we have built into the frame allows you to tune the bike for your preferences and, if you want, for the track conditions as well. So you can make it your own riding bike.
And that comes from the ability to adjust the progression, right? Via a chip, you've got short and long chain stays as well, and you've got the ability to run different sized rear wheels.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds like you could really do what you want, where you want with this bike, yeah. Along with, I guess, different options for different riders. Spec, I guess that's kind of where you come into play as well. What were thoughts for you as you were going to spec out a bike for performance, for price, durability?
Yeah, so spec is definitely a huge thing when it comes to completes, and the downhill, some people say the downhill bike is a dying breed, but realistically, we see otherwise. Focusing for the two spec models, we'll feature the all-new RockShox Boxer, as well as some new suspension from our friends over at X-Fusion and RockShox as well when it comes to the rear shock. But when it comes down to it, a downhill bike, it needs to be comfortable, it needs to go fast, it doesn't want to buck a rider off, you want to make sure you can hang on to it. So realistically, we look at brakes and suspension are kind of the two main touch points. And obviously, our friends over at Continental definitely, hooked it up with some sick Cryptotols. I think those are coming front and rear on both of the spec model bikes.
What can riders expect for support and servicing the bike?
Sure, so like nuts and bolts servicing as a mechanic at the race, or as yourself as a racer who has to work on their bike, it's very straightforward. If there is a bolt, you put it in the frame and you tighten it. There's nothing complicated about the way the hardware works. And it being a downhill bike, we want to make sure the hardware won't give you any issues. So we erred on the side of hardware that is able to take a hit.
Yeah, so in terms of serviceability, all kits, whether bearings, hardware, etc., frame pieces, are all available through a GT dealer. And we will be able to, we're stocking these now, and have them in stock, ready to go for anyone that does have a Fury and, you know, wants to stock up on a nice little hardware bin, ready to go.
And frame warranty?
Yeah, so warranty, 3 years on the frame set, basically anything against manufacturer defects.
Then getting into a little bit of the details on suspension, kinematics, any changes there from the previous bike?
Sure. Again, we really liked how the previous bike behaved in the way it pedaled and the way the leverage progression was set up. Understanding that we have an evolved geometry and riders are going faster, we wanted to add a next level of leverage progression. So if you're going that fast, you can flip the leverage progression chip and the suspension can handle it, no problem. We also wanted the bike to sprint better out of corners, and so we increased the anti-squat. And luckily by doing that with an idler pulley, we can keep pedal kickback to nothing. And so there's no compromise with pedal kickback. The other thing that we changed is we increased the anti-rise because the bike got longer to keep the bike more stable under braking. So there's no pitching, but the rear tire does still grab for traction as you brake, so you can brake later into corners and have more confidence.
You said last year the GT team, they were racing the prototype, is that correct?
Correct, so COVID complicated the race team frame order.
Right.
And so what we did is we had a couple extra engineering frames left over and we sent them to the team. And we're like, hey, just ride these until your frames come in. They rode them for the entire season and they didn't break a single frame except for an incident where a rock smashed a down tube, but that can happen and crashes.
Crash,
right.
Yeah.
And so.
And that's, I mean, you guys have been in this for a while. One bike doesn't usually last a complete season, is that correct?
A downhill race bike gets pushed very hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can get pushed beyond its limits, especially in crashing scenarios. But even under riding scenarios, under the top riders, they can break bikes.
What were some of the things that the team really liked the most about the bike?
I guess the compliance of the frame compared to the previous one.
Okay.
The previous frame was definitely on the stiffer side of things. But, you know, working with them, whether it was, you know, some people saw we had some dual crowns on our Enduro Force bike as kind of our first test, if you will. You know, really kind of meeting in that middle sweet ground of having a stiff downhill bike that's able to rip tracks and hold lines, but at the same time have it be comfortable. You know, riders want to be confident, riders want to be in control. So, you know, giving them that kind of sweet balance of, you know, precision and comfort lets them kind of go as fast as they possibly can.
Okay. Being that it is a, I guess, mid-high pivot,
Yeah.
wheelbase or chainstay length extension, where does that sit?
Throughout its travel, it's incredibly consistent. So from sag on, I mean, the wheel path that you're looking at, slightly rearward, but mostly vertical. So if you hit an obstacle at a slow speed, a fast speed, a corner at a slow speed, a fast speed, go off a drop, slow or fast, the way you have to maneuver on the bike does not change. And so you have a very consistent chainstay length, front, center, and then the ratios between the two, which leads to just more confidence as a rider because you know exactly what it's going to do no matter how you're riding it.
Yeah, so you're getting less of the negative drawbacks of a higher pivot platform.
You can go too high.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. And I know in the reviews of other bikes that we've tested, obviously it's terrain and rider dependent, right? Like some riders may not find a place or an experience where that high pivot can be a drawback, and others can have it be a deal breaker. So it's cool that you get a little bit of that advantage without too much of the drawback. Weights.
Yeah, so completes are gonna be coming in at a pretty average build weights. I'd say that our frame weight is competitive for the space.
Okay.
The frame weight is about 4,300 grams. It's not a featherweight, but that's not its intended use.
Right.
Downhill bikes, you crash on them, they hit things. You can make the lightest downhill bike in the world if you want, but they're not very practical and they don't last that long. And nothing's worse than having to baby your bike. Like, you can just ride your bike and not think about breaking your frame.
Right. Well, and we're seeing more and more riders are adding weights to their bikes, right? So it seems like the arms race of making the lightest DH bike is behind us.
The only reason you'd add weight to your bike is to solve a problem. Right. So if your bike is too light, which it sounds like a funny thing, because like, oh, a bike can never be too light, but it can be, and we've learned that from our racers, and we've experienced it ourselves. We want to make sure that the weight was right and in the right location. So if your bike is overall too heavy, it might feel sluggish, but if it's too light, it might float away or get kicked off to the side because it has no mass behind it when you hit a bump at an angle, especially. But we can buy the best of both worlds by keeping the weight light on the front and the rear end of the bike, so the handling is still that of a light bike, but the stability, because of the weight is in the middle, is that of a heavy bike. So you get the best of both worlds.
Okay. And so the frame set weight you said and the completes are, I guess, build spec dependent, but around 38-ish pounds?
Around 38, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys very much. Any last thoughts or words about the bike? Stuff you're really proud of from a design element, having ridden them yourselves?
I mean, this is a bike that's very near and dear to my heart.
Okay.
I recently joined the GT team, and this was kind of one of the first projects front to back I got to work on.
Yeah.
Growing up as a downhill rider, you know, seeing GT and being a part of the, you know, resurgence of the brand and being able to put out kick-ass products like this, man, I'm stoked.
Right on.
And I'm stoked because we grew up riding downhill bikes together, and since we were probably 14 years old, and I know my goal ever since I started riding downhill bikes and then wanted to get into engineering was to make a downhill bike, and I could not be more proud of what we created, and I think it's not going to be the bike that's holding the rider back at this point, and I can say that confidently.
Right
I think that this is a world-class downhill bike.
Right on, guys. Well, thank you. And I'm very excited to get one to try out and ride myself this summer. So if you guys haven't checked it out yet, be sure to check out our Behind the Brands that we just did with the folks at GT and their new Southern California office. We'll link that down below. If you could, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see you back for more videos. And if you've got any more questions for these guys, leave them down below. We'll be sure to annoy them with emails and have them get back to you. So thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the trail.